Psalm 82. My children, oddT, coming at you, recovery on the road. Sunday, breaking down Psalm 82, divine counsel, supernatural. Who is he talking to, man? And the implications for creation and the future. Psalm 82, God the supreme ruler. God presides in the heavenly council. In the assembly of the Elohim, he gives his decision. You must stop judging unjustly. You must no longer be partial to the wicked. Defend the rights of the poor and the orphans. Be fair to the needy and the helpless. Rescue them from the power of evil men. How ignorant ye are, how stupid you are, completely corrupt, and justice has disappeared from the world. You are gods, I said. All of you are sons of the Most High. But you will die like men. Your life will end like that of any prince. Come, O God, and rule the world. All the nations are yours. Wow, pretty powerful. That is only 8 verses, but it has so much impact. So what I did was, I used my Logos subscription on my Logos Bible app. And yes, I got the Max because I'm a geek. Anyway, I haven't been playing with the AI. And it's got a bit of work, but it's okay. Anyway, this is from my books in my library. So it'll share, what I have access to. Psalm 82 stands out as a text emphasizing God's fundamental commitment to justice. That's good. Unfolding with a divine counsel. See, a divine counsel where God takes his place. So that's where he rules from, just like an ancient king. The Psalm's dramatic structure centers on God as the main speaker, rebuking divine beings and commanding them to act justly toward the weak and the needy. So he's saying, get your head out of the arse and start looking after your social needs, the real needs. The identity of these so-called gods remain debated, small g. Some scholars interpret them as human rulers holding authority as God's representatives. That's the end result, but that's no mention of the supernatural influences that we're talking about. A reading Jesus appears. This to me, I don't agree with this. A reading Jesus appears to adopt it when studying Psalm 82:6 and John. No, Jesus this is the same crowd that don't recognize what he did on Mount Hermon, but that's in the Transfiguration. But that's neither here nor there. I strongly believe that's not Jesus' view. Jesus knew what he was dealing with. He knew he was coming back, and he was showing us how to put out our spiritual armor and how to actually fight. This is the spiritual warfare from here on in. He showed us the way. Now, the simplest interpretation that goes on identifies them as Israel's rulers and judges who should have protected the weak, fatherless, poor, and needy, but failed to do so. Alternatively, these so-called gods can represent spiritual rulers and authorities. Spiritual rulers and authorities. The forces behind pagan belief systems. Yeah. Yes, that's true. Yeah. Since those charged with maintaining justice are not executing this task properly, so you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, God says, how long? The consequence of this failure proved catastrophic because those exercising, listen to this, moral authority are failing. The world's moral foundations are shaken. Though God appointed these gods as his sons, they will die like mere men because they have come under judgment. So, the big takeaway from Psalm 82 is that our spiritual brothers are subject to the same fate that we are because we have free will. So that brings an interesting point there. Their continuance into the next age is not guaranteed. Fascinating. Really. Yeah, because Paul says, and Jesus says, scriptures tell us that we were the pinnacle of creation, just below, a little bit below the angels, right? Or no, we were above the angels because we're going to be judging angels, right? Anyway, one part says we're below, another part says we're judging them. We're all part of that upside down kingdom. It's all good. You just got to do his will. So anyway, this is saying that, you got to take that responsibility positively. You got to take it responsibility. You have to take that responsibility. If the psalm references the Canaanite divine assembly, it functions as a bold polemic against Canaanite religion. Well, of course it does, because where do you? Israel's God invades El's assembly. El was their word for God, right? Denounces his gods as failing to uphold justice and announces their demise. That is true. The psalm concludes with the psalmist voice calling on God to judge and fulfill the royal role others have abandoned, establishing that divine justice ultimately rests with God alone. Well, boy, they got that right. Now, the sources for that was Timothy Sandoval and all, Introduction to Wisdom and Worship, Themes and Perspective in the Poetic Writings. John D. Berry and all, Faith Life Study Bible. J.L. Packer, Wayne Grudem, and Ajit Fernando, the ESV Global Study Bible. Thomas Hale, the Applied Old Testament Commentary, and Biblical Studies Press, the Net Bible First Edition Notes. So that's where that's coming from. But they're missing something, aren't they? So I said to my thing, I said, what are Heiser's views on Psalm 82 and the Divine Council? It's Michael S. Heiser. His interpretation of Psalm 82 centers on the understanding the divine council as a literary assembly of heavenly beings, not human judges or members of the Trinity, but rather lesser divine beings in God's heavenly council or assembly. He emphasizes the grammatical precision of the text. In 82:1, the word for God, Elohim, appears twice, once in singular form paired with God taking his place, and once in the plural form, by in the midst of, which grammatically requires a plural entity. Verse 6 confirms this plurality. God addresses the other divine beings as, you are gods, all of you, and calls them sons of the Most High. Heiser firmly rejects alternative interpretations. Some Christians propose the Trinity, but this creates heresy since the psalm depicts God judging the other divine being for corruption and sentencing them to death. Observations incompatible with Trinitarian theology. The view that these are human beings, Jewish leaders specifically, is equally flawed, since Scripture never teaches that Jews held authority over other nations. Rather, they were meant to remain separate. Psalm 89:5-7 decisively settles the matter by placing God's divine counsel explicitly in the heavens, of course, and not on earth. Eden was like a den. Language that makes sense only if the divine beings are heavenly, not humanly, i.e. up in the skies, in another dimension, not in our space. According to Heiser, the sons of God transgressed by failing to rule the nations justly, and Psalm 82 records Yahweh's judgment against these divine administrators for their abuse of authority. The psalm appears to reference the divine division of nations at Babel. Exactly. That's what no one failed to address before, and that's the missing goodness, because with you bring in Babel, what happened at Babel, you assigned the nations, you separated everyone, right? You know what I mean? And Jesus came to reverse that, to bring it all back. But that's where this crowd got set up. That's where all these guys got set up in the first place. That's where the trouble started, right? When he did that. And the psalm appears a reference to within the gods being the divine beings assigned authority over the dispersed peoples. That's when God dispersed the nation. The search was constrained to results authored by Michael S. Heiser. Would you like me to search your entire library instead? Wow. See, it's fancy. There's only got 3 books there. Then I said, how does John Walton view Psalm 82? Walton understands the divine council as Yahweh's functioning community. He stands alone but does not work alone, without a pantheon, but with an operational council. This framework shapes his reading of Psalm 82 significantly. In Psalm 82, the sons of God can be cantankerous or rebellion, yet Yahweh maintains strict oversight. Critically, none of the divine council members equal Yahweh, nor do they carry independent divine authority. Whatever authority they possess has been delegated rather than distributed by Yahweh. Delegated. Walton's broader framework connects Psalm 82 to the antediluvian, the flood narrative. Psalm 82 may illuminate the divine council role when God addressed the great assembly, the divine council elsewhere called sons of God, and rebukes them for failing to maintain justice with these gods referred to as sons of the Most High, who will die as mortals. Walton proposes a four-way connection between Genesis 6, Psalm 82, yeah, that's perfect, yes, Mesopotamian Apaku, and the Enochian Watchers. Yes, he's right there too. Potentially identifying these sons of God, Apaku, and Watchers as the same group who intermarried with human women, and though intended to extend order, instead initiated an era of corruption and injustice. That is the understatement of the century, of the time. It's because of that foolishness we're in the state that we're in now. And we got demons. Because you got demons and you got fallen angels. I think they're two different beings. This interpretation positions Psalm 82 not as an isolated judgment scene, but as part of a larger cosmic narrative of delegated authority gone awry. The Apaku function as agents of order whose influence eventually brought disorder, a pattern reflected in how the divine council members failed their administrative responsibilities. Yeah. Just look at that. I got two. I got the Old Testament theology for Christians, and John Walton, the last world of the flood mythology, theology, and the deluge debate. Why, geez, I didn't realize I had that. What how you doing, Ari? All right, Psalm 82, boys. See, she's all linked.